In today's video, we're taking a popular topic head on. Does video game violence really increase violent behaviour? Let's get into it. Whilst violence in video games has been present for some time, it wasn't until the early 90s when it truly began to show up in mainstream video game titles. This is when we began seeing games such as Mortal Kombat, Grand Theft Auto, and Doom all first appear on the scene. Comparing the levels of video game consumption and the levels of violent crimes should see an almost synchronized uptick from the 90s onward, right? Actually, no. In fact, violent crime rates have actually dropped since the 90s and have continued to do so, seeing violent crime rates from 1991 to 2016 decrease by over 45%. Now, we've all heard someone in our world, whether it be our mothers, a public figure, or some other form of authority in our lives, utter the phrase, playing those violent video games makes you more violent. It begs the question, if you're constantly immersed in violent gameplay, doesn't it seem quite plausible that you would start seeing the real world through a more aggressive lens? The answer is a little bit more complicated than a simple yes or no. It leads us to a term called priming, which refers to the unconscious rewiring of the neural pathways in our brain, which have a subconscious association with an activity. Whilst priming is very much a real thing in certain cases, there are no conclusive tests showing a long-term connection between video game violence and violent behaviour in reality. As a practical example, imagine you want to see if playing sad video games led to depression. And to test this, you had participants play a sad video game, and then afterwards you measured their level of sadness through a questionnaire or maybe observing the time spent smiling. You then crunch the data and find that playing sad video games makes you sad. What would you then conclude? That this short-term effect eventually leads to depression? That's quite a leap. This is exactly what happens with many of the violent video game studies out there. Producing a conclusive result for this subject is no easy task. This is because whilst people play video games, their lives have many external variables with contributing effects on their behaviour, and unless you can control these surrounding variables, there's no way to produce repeatable outcomes. Now I'm just going to pause for a sec and ask, if you found this video interesting so far, please give that blue like button some love and subscribe to stay updated. Back to it. Like a lot of behavioural psychology, the results aren't one size fits all. Different players have different preferences and personalities, so instead of just asking whether people can be affected, newer research is trying to understand who might be more affected. Some studies have shown that the more angrier or more aggressive tendencies shown by someone, the more likely they are to show aggression after playing a violent game. But again, these studies don't always take surrounding variables like work stress or home life into account, rendering the results inconclusive. Now let's talk self-determination theory. When a series of experiments in 2014 focused on competence, they made games more or less difficult by making the controls easier or harder to use by changing the challenge level of the game itself. When the participants felt like an incompetent player, they actually showed more aggressive feelings, thoughts, and behaviours, whether or not the game was violent. Now in conclusion, we at Gamify may be a little biased on the topic for discussion, as we not only love games, but we actually see benefits that come with playing games more regularly. But with that being said, we can't help but see the unsubstantiated claims stacked up against violent video games and the supposed link to real-life violence. And if you're going through some tough times, we want to encourage you to speak up and connect with trusted loved ones or maybe a professional. Video games can be a nice break from the stresses of life, but they're certainly not helpful in resolving any of the challenges you might be facing. And if you notice a friend or maybe a fellow gamer behaving a little differently, please don't be afraid to ask how they're doing. It can mean a lot. Let's look out for each other and keep on gaming. Now that about wraps up our video for today. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And again, if you love this video, please turn that like button blue and subscribe to stay updated. And as always, if you're interested in finding out more about gamification, head to our website at gamify.com. See ya.